we got here? I decided that since I was going to do a quick and dirty review of Cyberfrog Bloodhoney, that I was going to do it like really quick and dirty and just go ahead and do it live on my phone instead of trying to prepare a video and whatnot. Now, I've already got 3, 4 videos that review Cyberfrog Bloodhoney, so if you're wanting anything that is in detail, going panel by panel or scene by scene for the most part, because let me show you what I got here. See, I got the Cyberfrog Bloodhoney dented and dinged Ultimate Edition, and what this entails, it does contain Cyberfrog Bloodhoney, and it contains the companion issue Cyberfrog, the Cyberfrog 1998, The Diary of Heather Swain, which is kind of like a little bit of the same story but told from Heather Swain's perspective. So I just wanted to kind of show this book, show a few pages from it, and give you an idea of what's in it so that when we get to looking at REKT Planet, you're not just completely like, well, what the heck is this book? Now, Cyberfrog, the character, is something that Ethan Van Sciver created back in the 90s, I think. And he published some issues under Hall of Heroes and then under Harris Comics. And that's where all the original Cyberfrog material is located, is under Hall of Heroes and Harris. And so all of that is being treated now as non-canonical. It's actually, it represents what happened to Cyberfrog in the past, but it is not actually what happened to Cyberfrog in the past. If you want the real deal, if you want the real story, including Cyberfrog's authentic origin, you have to go to Cyberfrog Bloodhoney. So I'll just give you a few pages out of Bloodhoney just so you get a chance to see what it is that I see and what it is that frankly impressed me enough to get the book. We have a picture here of, it's almost kind of a Kryptonian-esque scene. You see a ship being launched against a reddish sun. And that was one of the themes that Ethan Van Sciver was going for, is he wanted Cyberfrog to be an idea of what would happen if the Superman mythos went horribly wrong in a way. And so what the idea was is that this rocket ship is actually a sentient cybernetic organism named Chel-Sin. And Chel-Sin is flying to the planet Earth because it has a couple of embryos that it's carrying, which have been sent by a benevolent society to Earth to help Earth fight off a hornet invasion. It is a invasion of sentient hornets called the Vispas. And the Vispas basically will attack a population, they'll take over the world, they'll convert the blood of the native inhabitants to honey for their young, and that's where the Bloodhoney title comes from. And so Chel-Sin is sent to Earth expecting to crash land among a troop of Boy Scouts in the New Jersey Pine Barrens. And what actually happens is she encounters a tree frog instead. And so from this tree frog and from the embryo that is in one of the embryos that is inside of Chel-Sin, you get Cyberfrog. And here is Cyberfrog in all of his full-page glory. And so this character is such that he can be rapidly evolved into whatever weapon Earth is going to need against the Vispas. So here we have an example of him being rapid evolved by Chel-Sin to cybernetically enhance himself and basically be able to fight off the big murder hornet invasion that is coming. Now, in addition to Chel-Sin, there's also the other embryo, and the other embryo merges with a salamander, and that salamander becomes Salamandroid. He is the much beefier, bulkier, heftier brother of Cyberfrog. He does not have the rapid evolve capabilities, and his job really is to protect Cyberfrog. He's basically the guy who plays defense for Cyberfrog, and then Cyberfrog is the one who's going to play offense against the Vispas. And here we get a look at their mother, Chelsin, and Chelsin is basically a spaceship who is going to lay dormant until the Vespa's invasion. And what we find is that Cyberfrog goes out into the world, and Cyberfrog, he begins saving people. He begins, you know, taking on the role of a regular superhero. And during that time, though, the people are horrified by his appearance because, here's this giant cybernetic frog. It's like, if he had actually merged with a human instead of with a tree frog, then that would have been a lot more conducive to humanity's accepting him. But instead, we get their overall rejection of him. With the exception of very few people, the most important of which is his lady friend, Heather Swain. She is a young woman who comes from an abusive home, and he befriends her, and more importantly, she befriends him. And basically, she keeps the spark of humanity alive within him so that he's not friendless as he is on Earth. And then after he meets his brother Salamandroid, they form kind of this ersatz family where basically he and Salamandroid go out and fight crime, and she provides them with chicken to eat from where she works. So she works at the local chicken fry, and all of that pretty much remains the same until the Vispas finally arrive, and the Vispas arrive on Earth. And it's Cyberfrog's job to fight off the Vispas, but I'm not going to give too much away from what happens within here. Suffice it to say that things go horribly wrong, and Cyberfrog finds himself completely unequipped to fight off the Vispas the way that he should be able to fight them off. I mean, here is the moment for which he was created, and all of a sudden, everything goes to hell right at that moment. So that is basically the story of Cyberfrog Bloodhoney, and then Cyberfrog 1988, The Diary of Heather Swain, gives the same story. It fills in gaps where Cyberfrog Bloodhoney leaves some gaps. You have The Diary of Heather Swain kind of fills in some of those gaps. For example, what happens to Heather during the Vespa's invasion, and who was this Traumadeus character that Cyberfrog said he had just finished fighting? You get a look at that character, and you get a look at a couple of other characters as well. But it also is a reference. It's also kind of a political commentary on the year 1998, saying that that's when things basically began to go wrong in American society, and American society really kind of tipped over the edge into the soy generation that we're experiencing now. You could almost look at 1998 being the birth of the soy world, and so there are larger meta themes that go along with Cyberfrog Bloodhoney, and will carry into Cyberfrog 2 REKT Planet and its companion books. There's Salamandroid Death's Sting. There's a Cyberfrog Heartsick Horror. That was a Halloween offering. And then there's also a Cyberfrog Deleted Scenes, which shows certain pages that Ethan went ahead and developed out into a full scene, but he decided not to put it into the actual book. So that's what I'm going to be reviewing. As far as the quality of this book goes, the artwork is good. Now, of course, I have my quibbles with the artwork, as I usually do. There are things that if you go now and you were to buy one of these earlier versions of Cyberfrog, you would find more errors and more things wrong with it than you would find in what he's currently published or has published or is publishing as part of his Cyberfrog 3 Red Extermination package. Because in that, one of the perks you'll find is a new version, an updated version of Cyberfrog Bloodhoney and Cyberfrog 2 REKT Planet, which is going to contain edits for all of the input that he has received since the beginning. So Ethan's kind of big on the whole George Lucas thing, He's going back and he's correcting the mistakes. He's correcting the spelling errors. If there's dialogue that should have been fleshed out better, he's going back and fleshing out the dialogue. If there's art touch-ups he needs to do, he's going to make the art touch-ups. Eventually, after iteration after iteration after iteration, I assume that at some point in the future we will finally have a quote unquote final edition of Cyberfrog that spans at least the first 4 volumes, because the first arc of Cyberfrog is supposed to be Cyberfrog Bloodhoney, Cyberfrog REKT Planet, Cyberfrog Red Extermination, and Cyberfrog the Green Supremacy. So once you have all those 4 books, you've got the first arc of Cyberfrog, and I assume that there will be like some hardbound edition that is the final authoritative edition of that. And, who knows? You might, if you do enough critiques of stuff like this, you might actually be able to get a few suggestions in. And one of the things you will note about Ethan is that he is very good at taking suggestions if they're good suggestions. I gave him a couple on Twitter. He immediately incorporated them into Cyberfrog 2 REKT Planet. He even had me on his show one time to show where he had incorporated one of my ideas. And so I was very appreciative to see that, and it did improve things immensely. I mean, he took my idea well beyond what I had contributed. So it's not like, I made it so much of a better page, as he took the idea, understood what I was saying, and then went and printed something brilliant instead. I mean, that's basically what he did. So I'm looking forward to Cyberfrog 2 REKT Planet, but I am expecting to see some of the things that kind of bother me, which is, for example, you have things like this. One of my things that I kind of tend to loathe are panel breaks that interfere with the sequence of paneling. So if you see a bug on the screen and all of a sudden its appendages and the rest of it are going out into the other panels and it's interfering with the flow of the book, I tend to frown upon those things, and he's just kind of like, meh, deal with it. Other things are, splash pages that take up way too much space. For example, here's a 2-page spread of just Cyberfrog jumping through the sky, and there's dialogue on one page. The other page is just artwork, and I look at this and I think to myself, yeah, you kind of just wasted 2 pages there. You could have had all of this stuff could have been the top part of the left-hand page, and that would have given you three more half pages for actual story. And when you're dealing with a book like Bloodhoney and Heather Swain together, I think this might be 90 pages or something. So it's almost like an ISOM-sized book. And to just take 2 pages and throw them away on a double-page spread like that, it's like where nothing's really happening except you're kind of just reintroducing the book, the character that you've already shown off in a full-page spread before. I don't know. I want to see more value than that provided in the book. And then, just other little things here and there, like speed lines in the wrong place, or maybe there's a word tenses where the character is speaking in the future tense and he should be speaking in the present tense. But again, this is an older version of Cyberfrog Bloodhoney. If you get the one that's coming out now with Red Extermination, it's going to have a lot of that stuff fixed. And so, someday I will probably do a Let's Fix Cyberfrog Bloodhoney and REKT Planet that is made from a combination of those 2 books, a later version that Ethan's done. But in the meantime, I've got a copy of the first version of REKT Planet, and that is what I'm going to be covering. So that's basically what I wanted to do, is just kind of get people up to speed, because I didn't want to waste an entire, what would you call it, an entire PowerPoint video trying to get people up to speed on Cyberfrog, especially since, because this is a square bound, just like the ISOM books, I'd have to buy another copy and rip this one to shreds. And the problem with doing that is that this is an older copy of the book. I'd have to buy a new copy and then rip that one to shreds in order to get the panels that I need. And I don't feel like spending that kind of money on it. It's not, especially when it is less than likely that REKT Planet in that volume is even going to be in its final form. So I'm just going to do the best that I can with the issues that I've got and deal with that and do my best, because One thing that is nice about these offerings with Cyberfrog 2 REKT Planet is that they're not square bound, and so I can probably like just smush them in my scanner and be able to take full page scans of them at least. So they're not going to look all that pretty when I have to deal with them, but at least I'm not going to be having to tear up my copies. And that'll be good enough. It'll have to be good enough until the day comes when I need to get like the later volumes and let's say, okay, let's just tear this to shreds and go to town on it. Who knows? Maybe that day will never come. I don't know. All right, so we've got a couple of comments from Look Back, and he says it's so nice and goofy, and that is true. If you look at Ethan Van Sciver's sense of humor, he does have a good sense of humor on him, especially when he's naming characters. I mean, who would think of a character named Traumadeus, who is like a cyborg who plays horrible ditties on a keyboard that just make your brains want to spill out? He'll have characters like Shock Roach and Rumblebee, and they're all just kind of like one or two letter off terms for various insects or bugs or things that a frog would normally have to deal with. And the one thing that I do think was missing from Cyberfrog Bloodhoney that I hope he put in to his latest round or will put in after hearing this is a rogues gallery. There were no splash pages or even half page panels featuring the kind of villains that he fought, because as Chelsin is relating his history and how he came to be and who he was fighting, and what he was meant to fight for, and who he met along the way, like Heather Swain, one thing we don't see is like just a montage of the different villains that he fought along the way. We might get like a verbal mention of them, but we don't actually get to see them. And that does hurt the book somewhat, in that we're just kind of left with this, vague picture in our minds with that has some associated names to it. And then Look Back says, I sometimes think Ethan just wants to draw something and makes a double page spread because it looks cool. And that is, yes, I agree with that. And that is kind of one of his Achilles heels, I think, when it comes to storytelling, is that I already know that there is a page in REKT Planet where Cyberfrog is leaping to attack Avispis, and he's got, Heather Swain in the background with another character, and then the Vispis is reflected in his cybernetic armor. And it's a very cool looking shot, but God knows we did not need an entire page dedicated to that shot. And if we were going to have it dedicated to that shot, what we don't need is to have very, very sparse dialogue on that page. One of the things that I hope came out when I was reviewing the ISOM number one edited edition is that one of the things a good writer will do in a fight scene is make the hero think about things other than the fight. And in this case, when Cyberfrog is jumping in to fight the Vespas, he could be thinking things like, I cannot believe I led that thing all the way here. I was so focused on finding Heather that I didn't even notice this thing was on my tail the whole time, and I'm so ashamed of myself that, I put my friend in danger, and I'd better, bring my best to this fight, or else my friend could be dead, and blah, 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 blah. There's so much that could be said that doesn't have anything to do with the fight itself. And so when these particular like spread pages offer themselves, let that be a time to explore what else could the hero be thinking about rather than just the fight. And let's put that in so that it gives a layer on top of what you can just see the character doing. Because what I don't like is thinking, okay, here he is. He's jumping into the fray, and he's jumping into the fray, and there's the bug reflected as he's jumping into the fray, and he's jumping into the fray to protect his friend, and he's jumping, and it's all just one note. It's one note repeated over and over and over again. Let there be additional notes. Let your splash pages be choruses of a sort. So that is the kind of advice that I would give to Ethan Van Sciver, or to any artists out there. I know one of the things that I just recently backed was Inglorious Rex by Shane Davis. I'm looking forward to that because it looks like he makes use of gigantic spreads as well. And what I want to see is if he makes use of layering in the same way, so that we're not just left hanging with a picture and, having to like try and dump our own thoughts and feelings into the picture instead of having things provided to us by the writer. And so that'll be something that comes later on down the road because, like I said, I've got like 4 Cyberfrog books now to review, and that's going to take a while. Andy R says, "Is Cyberfrog your usual cup of tea when it comes to comics, sci-fi, horror?" Not really. No, it's not. More, I'm more for the. Well, once upon a time, I was more for just the straight up superhero business. But since I've lost interest in the big two, I go more out for the more eccentric ideas. Like something that was recently published that I thought was pretty interesting was The Weatherman, about a guy who is he's a weatherman on Mars in an era where Earth has been largely wiped out by a virus, and then we find out that the weatherman himself is possibly the guy who delivered that virus to Earth, and now he's got to find a way to bring his old personality back. It's kind of a spin on Total Recall. And so that's kind of interesting. I just finished reading the Kieran Gillen's fantasy series Die, which is about a set of friends who are abducted into a fantasy world and are released 2 years later, minus one friend. And years later, they discover the path back to that world, and now they have to go back and rescue the friend that they lost, and also deal with the trauma of the lives that they've lived since that time. Um, so those are the kinds of things that I guess I go and look for these days. Of course, I am looking into the Rippaverse because I was hoping that the Rippaverse would turn out to be something along the lines of CrossGen or Valiant or something that was a viable third-party comic book world, something like Dark Horse's Comics Greatest World, which really was not anywhere near greatest. And so I that was what was kind of getting me back around to the superhero stuff, and unfortunately, it just hasn't measured up so far. I'm still kind of hopeful, and I'm still going to review a few things that come out, but eventually, I'm going to hit a wall with that. I have a feeling already. Oh, Andy R is asking how many pages again? Well, I want to say that Cyberfrog Bloodhoney is. I want to say that together with the Diary of Heather Swain, that it's about 80 pages, 90 pages. I haven't counted. Um, Let me see if, nah, there's no table of contents, so I couldn't really count this out in any quick amount of time. But when I got the problem with there's only really one problem with this book, and it's not so much of a problem as it is just a matter of structure, and it's the fact that the real story doesn't begin until the massive catastrophe happens. It's kind of like, have you ever you remember watching Zack Snyder's Man of Steel, and by the end of Man of Steel, you realized, okay, now we're all set up to see an actual Superman movie, because what we've been watching so far has been more like the Incredible Hulk with a mixture of Kryptonian stuff. It really wasn't authentically Superman until the very end. And then you got to wait to the next movie, and then instead of getting a Superman movie, you get the massive cacophony of crap that was Batman v Superman. So that is where Cyberfrog Bloodhoney and the Diary of Heather Swain leaves us. We don't really get a chance to start the real story yet. The real story is going to be in REKT Planet. So this is the one that's kind of make or break time, and it's one that everyone knows. Ethan Van Sciver was like hellishly late in producing this, but it was originally supposed to be like a 40-something page book. And instead of that, it turned into a 73-page book. So there's a lot more material in Cyberfrog 2 REKT Planet that would have been there had he just, gone to press, balls to the wall, and tried to push stuff out as fast as he can to satisfy his readers. Now, unfortunately, that's left a lot of people disgruntled, but he's back on track now. He's fulfilled the Cyberfrog 2 campaign. Now it's in Dark Harvest is the next campaign, which is a prelude book that fleshes out a scene that occurs in REKT Planet. Apparently, there's a scene dealing with a particular character in a cave and what goes on in there. So that is going to be fleshed out, and it's also going to provide a preview for Red Extermination. Now, one of the things that I'm not terribly fond of are these preview books that get out there, because it's almost like, okay, let me give you a little something, and then if you can just throw me some money, I'll give you something, and then later on, once I've got more money, I'll produce the rest of it. I'm not really a huge fan of buying the same material twice. So the fact that I'm getting a 10-page story of Dark Harvest and then 10 pages of what I'm buying again in Red Extermination, not really huge on that. That's something that I really wish that Comicsgate creators would stay away from. That's why one of the things I will not be buying is the what is it? What is it called that he's doing now? Is it Fearless or is it something else? Can somebody tell me what is the book that he is doing about the guy who's like a fighter in his dreams? I want to say it's called Fearless, but I don't know. Look Back is asking, did you get the Kyle Ritter book Starblades? No, I didn't, and maybe one of these days. I mean, I did get Shane Davis's Inglorious Rex, and along with that, I got Starlight Cats, so I'm going to be reviewing both of those. One of the things that, oh God, I hope this isn't going to subject me to too much pain, but I actually did plunk down an offer on eBay for one of Mike S. Miller's books, Lone Star: Heart of a Hero, because I heard Ethan Van Sciver is going to be reviewing that, and I kind of wanted to see if my review shaped up anything to be like his review. So I don't know if that sale's going to go through. If it does, great. If not, then I'll just pass on that. Fearsome, thank you, Andy R. Fearsome is the new title by Ethan Van Sciver about a guy who kind of dreams himself into a heroic demon fighting state or something like that. I don't really know what the book's about, but he's coming out with a preview book for it. It's like, I just want whenever the book is actually done. That's when I want to read something to do with that. So the Dark Harvest campaign is not like really something I wish I had to get, but it is what it is. And eventually, one of these days, I'll take a look at John Malin's work as well. He's got that Graveyard Shift that I think is coming up on Volume 5, and he's got all these supplemental books. There's a lot of material there to read. I just hope it's good. I wasn't like terribly impressed with the scenes that Ethan Van Sciver posted on his Twitter account, even the one that he took down. Let's see. Andy R. I see. So this was a lot of origin. Cyberfrog Bloodhoney, yes. The first half of the book is dedicated to catching the reader up to the present day, which in Cyberfrog Bloodhoney Part 2, the present day is actually 1998. And 1998 is when the Vispa's invasion occurs. And then Cyberfrog 2 is going to jump to an even later time. Thoughts on setup for a long-term series story? Well, it's setting the stage for REKT Planet is basically what Cyberfrog Bloodhoney does and what the Diary of Heather Swain does. And just a general question on like when it comes to pacing and writing, what did Cyberfrog do good or bad in that case? Well, like I said, I don't really have a problem with how Cyberfrog was structured, except that at the end it kind of left us hanging and wondering where the real story is going to go from here. And we knew we were going to get that in REKT Planet, and that must have been an insane delay for people who were like chomping at the bit, ready to read the next story. So that was a little bit regrettable in that case. OOP Horror says Lone Star is great. Smiller is the GOAT. Graveyard Shift is great. How the fuck have you never read any of these Comicsgate classics? What the hell? Well, I mean, in a nutshell, they're expensive, for one thing. And for another thing, I didn't have this channel at the time and I didn't know the people who were writing these things. And that's really, if you don't know the people and have not gotten to know the people who are involved with Comicsgate, who are involved with independent comics publishing, then you don't have a real reason to pick up their books. DC and Marvel and Image, they've got that brand clout behind them. What does the Cyberfrog character have except, a cool design and some cool artwork? What does Graveyard Shift have? Who even is John Malin or Shane Davis? I've read some of their stuff, probably. I think Shane Davis was the artist on Superman Earth 1, so I know I've at least read that. But I also turned in Earth 1 back to, whoever I bought it from because I didn't think it was up to snuff. So, whoever these comic book creators are, it really is kind of about establishing first the relationship with the comic book creator through getting to know them on YouTube. It's just basically what Eric July did in order to fund ISOM. In order to, well, not fund, but I mean he made sales off of ISOM by first building a base of fans for himself, people who wanted to get to know him better and who would follow him on his channel, and then would buy his stuff, and that's how ISOM #1 got $3.7 million. It's not because it was a quality book. I mean, most of us have read it by now, and we look at it and say, okay, it's not the most horrible thing that was ever published, but it's got a lot of flaws, and it winds up being painful to read. But as far as being worth the $3.7 million, I mean, it was worth it to people who wanted to throw him some money and say, I support you. That's where that came from. It wasn't from the quality of the book. It couldn't be from the quality of the book because nobody had any exposure to the book itself until after it was something that there's like some kid with a bell on his bike outside or something. The perils of live streaming. So Eric July built himself a fan base, and based on and off the strength of that fan base, he converted them into sales of a whopping number of sales. And now that is tapering off as he gets down to the base of actual fans who are willing to pay for his stuff on a probably month after month basis. And, the Rippaverse may at this point become a self sustaining company if it puts out a book a month and can get a base who is willing to buy a book a month. And those are the only people, as much as we complain about the quality of the Rippaverse, or at least as much as I complain about it, the only people he has to satisfy are the people who are willing to buy his book month after month. And as long as he's keeping them happy, he's good to go. So let's see. Andy R says, I'm not crazy about the future of comic sales being based on YouTube audiences. It's hard to cultivate the talent for comic book creation and YouTubing. Yeah, it's almost like politics, isn't it? Because what they say about politics is that it has become more about who can put forward a public persona and less about who's actually good at problem solving. You might have somebody out there who is an absolute nebbish when it comes to speaking in public. And yet you need that skill in order to be able to convince the crowd that you are the right person for the job. So if you have the skill, the public speaking skills, you may be able to insert yourself into politics when you really have no business being there because you're just absolute ass at problem solving. So yeah, I mean that is something to worry about, is that when you look at like Eric July's talent at building a YouTube brand for himself, has that really translated into writing talent? It's not a one-to-one. It's I mean, he's got creativity, he's got various other creative outlets at his disposal, but he's not a Grant Morrison, he's not even a Chuck Dixon. But you know, he doesn't have to be. That's the thing. So long as he's got that popularity with his YouTube audience, and he can find a crowd that's willing to sustain him for one book a month at least, and then maybe he'll, parlay out into, that's probably the wrong word, but maybe he'll extend his business out into publishing other people's books because he's got those warehouses and you got to fill them with something. Then why not, use his main business as a springboard for other businesses. It could wind up going very well for him. And so I don't think we're going to be seeing a Ripaverse collapse in the next couple of years necessarily. I mean, I know there's a lot of people who are trying to move the goalposts and say, oh, well, Ripaverse is only going to be around for X number of years and that's it. But like I said, all you need is that base to keep buying books. It's the same thing that I guess is keeping Valiant alive, even though, God knows, Valiant's quality went downhill. Let's see. OOP Horror, I just thought you had been here longer. Welcome to Comicsgate, brother. Hail Comicsgate. Hail Comicsgate indeed. Yeah, I found out about Ethan Van Sciver, and from him I bought his Cyberfrog Warts and All Executive Edition. And so that basically will get you all of his early Cyberfrog material. And then Cyberfrog Bloodhoney, I got the dented and dinged edition, which was only like 10 or 15 bucks off of eBay. And so once I had those two things in hand, it was like, all right, well, let's keep going forward with that. And then, of course, I started this channel. Well, I started it years ago, but when I got into the comics aspect of this channel, because I originally started it as something that was more along the Styx, Hex, and Emma route of politics and religion and things like that. I just kind of had my little niches here and there. Once I got into comics and realized that, and I've always been a comic book reader, mind you. I mean, I've been reading comics since I was, around 7 or 8 years old. But I started the channel as something that was more politics minded, and then I segued over to comic book critiques when I realized that there really wasn't much going on in that area. So so that's where I kind of have found a niche now, and I just hit 800 subscribers. So there will be a book sale next week. If you haven't seen my Amazon offerings, there's a couple on there that are Amazon exclusives that I do have the ability to run sales on. And so next week I will be running a sale on those two books in honor of my hitting 800 subscribers on YouTube. So let's see. So yeah, I mean, I found out about Ethan and really watching his channel because, of course, he is the human sunbeam and everybody is drawn to his glow and his warmth. and they his and so he won me over into buying Cyberfrog Bloodhoney and then buying the Cyberfrog Warts and All edition and now into REKT Planet. And I will most likely continue through the Green Supremacy at least, and then we'll see where it goes from there. Okay, who else have we got? Anonymous T. Jones, LOL, welcome to Comicsgate as it's in the process of imploding. I know, I hate all the drama. I miss Narwhal and I miss Reenie on the show. Hexal and Comics, hello, folks. I love that word, nebbish. Lookbox says, nah, Comicsgate is just a term. Talented creators will continue to do fine. EVS, mail, etc. are going nowhere. Yes, there is a very strong Comicsgate core with John Malin, with Shane Davis, and with Ethan, of course. They have a very strong trinity of creators among them, and they still have friends loyal to them. So I don't think Comicsgate is going away by any means, especially since it's not an official imprint anyway, except for the next thing, Cool Story Bro. I think that's going to be coming out under that. Zach will continue to be solid as well. Yeah, that's Diversity in Comics, if I'm not mistaken. Hexal in Comics says, congrats on 800, Mike. Thank you very much. All right. We've gone on for about 40 minutes now, so I'm going to go ahead and break off. But yes, my REKT Planet review will be coming soon. Don't know how many reviews it'll split into. Like I said, the way that I tend to do these things is I will read a few pages, and if I come up with an idea for a review video based off of that, then I will go ahead and do a segment on that, kind of like I did with Alpha Core. Alpha Core turned into 4 videos, and really the second video of that should have been a lot shorter because I should have saved and dwelled on the last part of that video a lot longer before publishing anything on it, because I think I wound up duplicating myself to an untoward degree. But I wound up with like 4 videos on Alpha Core. REKT Planet, probably get 3 or 4 out of that. And we'll see what happens with the other offerings. So thank you for. Oh, what happened to Narwhal and Rini? Andy R asks. They are great artists and writers. Well, they're still at work. But there has been a schism that has developed within Comicsgate, and Rini and Narwhal are on one side of the schism, and Ethan, Shane, and Malin are on another side of that. So it has to do with there. If you look at the latest Ethan Van Sciver trash cast, you'll see the beginnings of the whole feud. But it has to do with a particular comic book guy named Patrick Thomas Parnell, and how he has been working behind the scenes since like August of 2023 to kind of drive a wedge between certain creators. And it appears that for the meantime that he's succeeded in doing that, and basically basing that on various messages that Ethan's now in the process of exposing. So if you wanna get a primer on what all the drama is within Comicsgate, that trash cast that he had last night is probably a good way to get yourself caught up on what's going on. Andy R says, congrats on the 800. Thank you. And Lookback says, bye bye. Thanks for the little hangout. Yes, thank you to everyone who joined in. I think we actually managed to get about 21 people on at one time this time. So that was nice. I'm going to go ahead and click off and just make sure you're subscribed in case you need to catch the REKT Planet reviews. And I will talk to y'all later. How do I stop this thing? Okay, there is a big X in the left-hand corner. I hope that doesn't erase everything that I've just done. Wouldn't that suck? Are you sure you want to stop streaming? Oh.